The Ukraine army is falling apart as Ukraine is running out of soldiers. The Ukraine army is dealing with a massive desertion problem, with 19,000 soldiers being charged with abandoning their posts since the start of this year. This is why Ukraine has been engaging in forced conscription, kidnapping Ukrainian men off the streets so they can die for NATO. It's so bad that Ukraine has lost 1/5 of their population due to migration and an entire generation of Ukrainian men. It's so bad that the Ukrainian army is now filled with old men and teenagers. And after all this carnage, we even have Western military officials that are admitting that Ukraine cannot win the war against Russia. The only problem is Russia is in a much stronger position now than they was at the beginning of this war, and now Ukraine has less leverage to negotiate with. This is why it made no sense to kill the peace deal proposed at the beginning of the war that Russia was okay with, that would have left Ukraine at a much more advantageous position than they are right now. And after years of denial, we finally have Victoria Nuland and other Western officials openly admitting that they tanked a peace deal that would have saved countless Ukrainian lives.
First told by former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett that both sides were really close to the end, to the successful end of the negotiations, and then Prime Minister Boris Johnson interfered and stopped prevented Ukrainians from signing the deal. And then Ukrainian Representative Arahami kind of confirmed that yes, he said in an interview that there was some kind of advice from Boris Johnson to stop negotiating and to win this war militarily.
And it became clear to us, clear to the Brits, clear to others, that Putin's main condition was buried in an annex to this document that they were working on. And it included limits on the precise kinds of weapon systems that Ukraine could have after the deal. And there were no similar constraints on Russia. Russia wasn't required to pull back. Russia wasn't required to have a buffer zone from the Ukrainian border, wasn't required to have the same constraints on its military facing Ukraine. And people outside Ukraine started asking questions about whether this was a good deal, and it was at that point that it fell apart.
Isn't it interesting how all the people who was called Putin puppets because we wanted peace in Ukraine turned out to be the only people who cared about Ukrainians? Our ruling class knew exactly what they was doing. The goal of the military-industrial complex is not waging successful war, it's waging never-ending profitable war. Neocons openly brag about the fact that Ukraine was a great opportunity for them to test their weapons and test new battlefield innovations. Yes, the West used Ukraine as war guinea pigs. I really hope that Taiwan has their head screwed on right, because if they believe the West has their best interest at heart, then they will be burnt just like Ukraine.